Impulsive young Prince Siegfried craves glory and recognition from his aloof parents, the King and Queen of Denmark. Starting a war with the neighboring country and seeking out the most feared dragon in the realm seems like a good place to start. An epic tale full of action, adventure, mythological beasts, magic swords, powerful rings, and a treacherous companion. A reimagining of the Volsunga saga, Siegfried, Dragon Slayer, utilizes beautiful coffee-painted illustrations by Jasmine Redford to breathe new life into the myth that partially inspired J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
Will Siegfried succeed? There's only one way to find out.
Punch TV! This is Brennan, the Riz Rizzling, and I'm here with the mighty Mark Allard to talk to you about your brand new graphic novel. My friend, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I see that you've come out with your Sunday best on. It's nice to see you so dressed up. Does this have to do something with your graphic novel?
Yeah, for sure. I'm dressed as an approximation of what we understand Vikings to have dressed as, based on the limited archaeological knowledge we have of how they dressed. And yeah, it's based on my graphic novel, which is Siegfried Dragon Slayer, which is coming out February 16th. And yeah, so that's...
Good, so tell me a bit about Siegfried the Dragon Slayer. What is it all about?
So it is as a writer, it's my adaptation, my interpretation of the Volsunga saga. I wanted to adapt it into a graphic novel because I felt like the Volsunga saga is something that is academic, it's incredibly stuffy, and it is designed really to stick in the halls of academia and to stick with, you know, the elites, if you will. And I really wanted to take it out of that realm and put it into the hands of the many because it's so important to the fantasy genre, because it is partially what inspired Tolkien to write The Hobbit and later The Lord of the Rings. So then I got Jasmine Redford involved, the artist, and then she brought in this beautiful fantasy-style coffee painting artwork, and that's kind of where the project began from there.
Good, good. So what made you interested in the Volsunga saga? Like, what is it about it that just drew you in to say this needs to be done?
I've loved pagan mythology and ancient pagan mythology since I was a young boy. And I love like the Mayan mythology, like the Aztec mythology, like the hero twin journey. I absolutely love the Epic of Gilgamesh as well. But with the Volsunga saga, when I read it, I didn't even, I hadn't reread The Hobbit for a long time. But as soon as I read it, I was like, oh my God, Fafnir is Smaug and Regan is Gollum. And I just saw all of this in there without even reading up on Tolkien. Then I read up on Tolkien and The Hobbit. And I was like, oh, I'm right. This is actually what inspired him to begin to write The Hobbit.
So has this been a project you've had in mind for quite a long time, or is it fairly new, or what was the inspiration? Like, what day were you like, this needs to happen?
So it was shortly after Christmas, so 2017 into 2018. So shortly after Christmas, it must have been like the first few days of January. And that's when I knew that I wanted to adapt it. And it took several months to write the script for the graphic novel. And then from there, it's been like a 4-year journey to get it done.
And how did you get Jasmine Redford involved as your artist?
Well, I remember we've been friends since pretty much since I met Elaine after coming to Canada, so several months after I'd been in Canada. And she had told me that she does artwork and stuff like this, but I'd never seen examples. So fast forward a couple of years, and this must have been 2017, November 2017. And she brought her portfolio to a friend's birthday party, and she showed me it, and it was this fantasy comic that she hadn't finished. And it was the original physical art pages, and I was just blown away. I knew that I had to have an excuse to work with Jasmine. And then when she later showed me that she did coffee painting, and when it came round to me having written the script for the Volsunga saga, I knew that it had, for Siegfried Dragon Slayer, I knew that it had to be Jasmine who worked on it.
So can you speak a little bit about the coffee painting? What exactly is that? How is that different than just other styles of artwork?
Yeah, it's interesting because it replaces colouring. So colouring, shading, flatting, it replaces all of that, and your colours are essentially coffee, and you get different tonalities of coffee. So you get darker coffee, fainter coffee, and from what I understand from Jasmine, the coffee can be a little bit tricky to play with. So you have to be very careful. You have to do it in about 3 different passes. So do one pass, wait for it to dry, do another pass with it, wait for it to dry. So you have to really carefully build up the places you want dark, otherwise it's ruined. So it's tricky to do, but it gives this warm feeling to it, and mixed with Jasmine's unique like art dimensions and how she draws characters, it really lends this like warm, like early days of fantasy, like Tolkien era feeling to it. When I first saw that coffee painting, it kind of made me think of the map that you see at the front of the Hobbit book, because it has that same kind of colouring to it.
Now, does decaf coffee make a difference?
No.
Yeah. That's an important question, I think, right?
Yeah.
The type of the brew that you prefer to work with.
Yeah.
So as a writer, what is your process as far as telling the artist what you want to look like? Are you very prescriptive with your scripts, or are you a bit more open and let the artist play with it how they want?
So I'm kind of like, some artists love me, some artists don't like me so much, depending on how they're used to working. So a lot of artists nowadays are used to working with full script, and so I'm more like the Alan Moore kind of guy, where I do a very heavy script, and I would describe very surgically every panel, how I want that to appear, and that comes from, with me, it comes from a experience, an education in screenwriting, and in filmmaking too. So it's I have this very visual mind's eye, where I will just see that's exactly how I want a panel to be, and I see it very filmically, and I would describe it fully, do full dialogue. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of your favorite books? If you're going to sit down one night when you're between making your amazing costumes and doing all your writing, if you're going to sit down and read something, what's grabbing you right now?
So right now, one that I recently finished reading, it's a very heavy read, was the Ukrainian and Russian notebooks, I think it was called, Ukrainian and Russian notebooks, and it's all about the Holodomor. So yeah, very heavy topic. But one of my favorites that I keep going back to is A History of Violence. It's just such a beautifully illustrated book. And Robert Wagner, I guess he pronounces it Wagner. Robert Wagner, he really is such a descriptive writer, and he knows how things should feel and how things should be paced out. Has this very filmic feel to it. And I read it after I'd watched the movie. So for me, I read it and I was like, wow, they didn't have to do much adaptation work for the movie. It almost feels like they picked that up as the script. Yeah.
Wow. So now I realize the book is just coming out,
Yeah.
so you probably haven't thought too much of this yet, but do you have an idea what your next project is going to be? Is there something already on the works coming up?
Yeah, so it'll be the book 2 of Siegfried Dragon's Lair, because it's such a long project, I had to break it into 2 parts. But after that, I've got a couple of ideas milling around. There's one that I'm kind of trying to do the research on. It's a little bit tough because the people involved have passed away. So it's based on the true story, which is Operation Oblivion. That's when Chinese Canadians, against the backdrop of the Chinese Exclusion Act, they chose to fight for Canada, but under secrecy from the British SOE, they weren't allowed to disclose what they did. But we know now that what they did was mop up the end of the Japanese invasions in the Pacific Islands. So they did some very, very brave work that allowed the British just to end their invasion of the Pacific Islands towards the very final days of the war.
Oh wow! So another light topic. It sounds
Yeah.
like get some nice light reading before you go to bed. So now, besides Jasmine, who is an amazing artist, if you could work with any other artist, if time was not an issue, who would it be?
I normally don't go for the big names. I normally go for indies. So locally, I would love to work with Joey Atimio. He's a great artist. Does this really like rich ink work, like DC style, like 90s DC style. Really fantastic stuff. I would also like to work with Stephen Rosier out of Calgary at some point. Yeah, those are 2 names that jump to mind for sure.
Good, right on. So before we go, tell us, where can we find your book? When is it coming out? Give us all the details so we can run out and buy it right away.
So I'll be doing a signing here actually at Amazing Stories on February 19th, 12 to 4:30 if people want to come by. And then it'll be at all the local comic book shops, local bookshops.
Good, and that's through a Renegade.
Every Renegade Arts Entertainment out of Canmore, yeah.
Perfect, awesome. And if we come for a signing, will you have your Viking outfit on?
Yeah, I should do, yeah.
Perfect. And like, do you ever stand there still and do photos? Like,
Yeah, I can do that.
is that okay? Cool. You heard it here first. Come get your book, get an autograph, get a photo. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we hope all the best of success with your book. So,
Thank you.